People who can't say no. What is the worst thing you ended up doing for someone? My boss was like, do you want to stay extra tonight? So I said yeah. And then a different boss said, do you want to cover the morning shift too? So I said yes. And then I was asked if I wanted to cover the evening shift as well, so I said yes. And this is how I was once a bartender for 34 hours straight. Not me, but my brother. When we were young we were at a strip club, and when it came time to leave, one of the strippers asked us for a ride home. My brother, who can't say no to this day, accepted. As it turns out, she lived almost 2 hours away. As it turns out, when he pulled in front of her house, she decided to thank him with a blowjob. Right there and then. How do I know this? I had to watch from the backseat while my brother got a BJ from a stripper. Yeah. That's the worst thing he did to me. Because he can't say no. I once ended up hosting a Bible study at my house. I don't even go to church. Building a deck, moving furniture, and laying new trim for a girl I worked with. It took 3 days. She only had me do it so she could sell the house for more money. And she paid me with a half-empty bottle of birthday cake flavored vodka. Addendum. She was married at the time. I sang 2 sets of songs at a crowded restaurant while my struggling artist friend played guitar and backed me up. He begged me to do it. And I figured when he heard how terrible I sounded at our rehearsal he would let me back out. But no. The looks on the faces of the patrons, somewhere between sympathy and dumbfoundedness, will haunt me until I die. When I can't say no, I just end up buying things and spending way too much money. In the past couple years, I've spent hundreds of dollars on a couple niche porn sites just because they make regular videos using my favorite rubber ducky. I couldn't break up with this annoying, clingy girl Janice, so I told her my work was relocating me to Yemen. Then I actually flew to Yemen. Back in my drug using days I was fairly generous. I know how awful dope sickness is, so I would often spot my using friends small amounts so they could go to work or something. I ended up quitting heroin for almost 3 years when an old acquaintance messaged me saying he finally had my money. It worked out to be about $60 and I was like, fuck yeah, I'll buy some beers. When I finally got over to his place he had a slew of pills out and said I could take what I wanted. Needless to say I got addicted again because saying no to free drugs is incredibly hard. Edit. Just as a side note, I do not blame anything on this guy. He was doing what he needed to get by. I should have been smarter and said keep the money. It's all good instead of putting myself in a bad situation. Especially for money I had already assumed was lost and didn't need. Edit 2. I just want to say thank you for everyone's wonderfully kind words. This allowed me to do a lot of needed reflection. I'm very happy with where I am currently. If you are dealing with addiction, remember you are not alone. And even if you are alone, I would be happy to talk via PM anytime. My aunt is getting divorced from her douchebag husband of 15 years. She still does his laundry because she can't say no. The divorce finalizes this January, but has been in progress for about 8 months. No idea how she manages to actually be the one to initiate a divorce. But can't tell him to FCK off about his stained tighty whities. Let my co-worker move in with me now. I have this messy BTCH all in my house, f-king stuff up, letting her dog pee everywhere and smoking in her bedroom. I was home during college for the summers. A middle school friend suddenly called me up after going through 6 people to track down my number. He needed a place to stay for the weekend. Back then, I just couldn't say no, so I said yes. House wasn't that big. 4 other people excluding me were already living in it. And then he comes. I notice within seconds that this guy has changed a lot. And for the worse. It turns out he's stinking. Tells me he's been on the road since a couple of weeks. He's having some issues with his girlfriend. And he's talking about weird things. He wasn't even on drugs or anything. Anyway, he stays on way past the weekend. I'm wondering if he'll ever leave. Nope. Not happening. Everyone in the house is a little freaked out because he has no basic manners or consideration for anyone. Too many incidents to state now. One of them is that my mom caught him eavesdropping outside my parents' bedroom door at 2 AM. To cut it short, I had to make a plan with my friends and leave the city, making sure he knows that he won't be able to accompany me. I figured he'd have little shame and leave knowing that I'm not there anymore. Thankfully, it worked. The next day he was out, lending my friend my Xbox One for a weekend when Halo 5 just came out. He was an arsehole friend, and since the game doesn't have split screen, it's not like I could play too. I couldn't say no to a friend who asked me to go on a bus trip to New York's Radio City Music Hall as a chaperone for a group of middle school students. They couldn't get enough parents to volunteer. Close bracket. The trip was a disaster as the bus broke down just outside Manhattan. It poured rain, and 2 of the kids had stomach sickness from riding the bus and nowhere to use a bathroom, with the broken down bus pulled over on the shoulder of a busy expressway. When I was 16, my girlfriend's brother's bike was stolen from their front porch. So we search the area in my car and see 2 guys riding the bike. So we pull over, yell at them to give the bike back. They then ask for a ride home. And I did. That was pretty awkward, lol. I've degraded myself during sex to please him, even though I didn't want to. I know some girls out there love being kinky and nasty, and good for them. Everyone's preferences are valid, yo. But I was never that girl, and I was pressured into some horrible stuff. The scourge of the pickup truck owner is that everyone you know thinks you bought it to help them move one day. I agreed to slaughter and skin a chicken on a holiday once because the host was so excited to cook us one of his favorite traditional food. I then proceed to eat the chicken and silently gagging because once again I didn't have the heart to tell him I'm a vegetarian. If I remember correctly, I think the worst thing I ever did was go ice skating with a potential girlfriend when I had never once ever laced up a pair of skates. She just loved skating so much. So naturally, I agreed to go. Nearly killed myself on multiple occasions and took at least 2 good falls on my head. All's well that ends well. Though, our next hangout was Math Museum and Natural History Museum. I love math and history. And her and I have been dating for over 2 years now. She said she felt terrible when I told her I didn't know how to ice skate a few minutes after we got off the ice, but hey, at least she didn't abandon me for looking foolish. Close bracket. I've done many people's homework projects for them in high school. Edit. I thought I should explain my reason to why I did stuff for people even though it was clear that they were using me. People's grades started dropping when I started sending them a lot of homework, meaning that they wouldn't understand the material and end up scoring lower on tests. I ended up with a higher grade, so in a way my generousness was more like a curse in disguise. Edit 2. Fixed a few errors. I let a friend of mine FCK my crush in my brother's room when I was in mine. So much tears that night. I can usually say no, but I was hungover and wanted my colleague to go away, so I said yes. Now I'm signed up for the national risk. Not sure if this is the worst, but I stopped at a gas station on my way to Pittsburgh and a hitchhiker asked me for a ride. The girl I was bringing with me had also gotten out of the car to go to the bathroom and came back to a random hippie looking guy in the back seat. I started driving, and a mile or 2 down the road he realized I went the wrong way he wanted to go. So I dropped him off at the exit just so he could walk back to the gas station. Companies will work you to death if you can't say no. Conversely, it is shocking how morally outraged people become when you say no to them. The morality of not everyone, but many people is driven by getting what they want, and you are in their mind a bad person for not giving it to them. My fiance at the time bought me a bongo set. Immediately after getting it, is purchased a $65 bongo stand. A friend that I knew from marching band asked me if she could use my bongos and congas to lead worship at her church. I tell her no problem and let her borrow them. When I get them back, the stand looks awful and has weird marks all over it, and when she returned it, the bongos weren't in the case but still attached to the stand that she had listing in her car. She even had the bongos on the stand the wrong way, which resulted in a crack on the side. Still upsets me to this day. Cleaning my sister's entire house. She isn't keen on cleaning. Hadn't been cleaned since the last time I was there. A year ago. I had to throw out pans and pots because the food in it had rotted and turned into acid. F-king up the pans. It's a shame no one will see this because it's larger than the Titanic for me and fits perfectly. I worked on a farm for 3 months. 7 days a week. 14 hours a day. Resident worker. For no money at all. Why? Because I was too PSSY to walk away. About a year ago I was visiting a friend who was at university in Manchester, UK. After a drunken night out everyone was feeling a little worse for wears the next morning. I wanted to make a good impression on his new friends. So when they asked me to go to the Greggs downstairs, a Northern English bakery, I agreed. It turns out that one was closed and I walked 25 minutes into town to the nearest one that was open. 50 minutes later I returned back to the room cold and wet. But at least I had the pasties. I've practically written 2 dissertations. One for contemporary dance and another for interior design. I'm just an engineering student that can write English. I always wanted to be the person who kept their word. The one who was reliable and did what they said they were going to do. But becoming this person takes work and practice. It's taken years to get here. And part of the process is following through with everything you agree to do. No matter how stupid or difficult it seems later. What happens along the way is you become a person who can comfortably say no. Because you learn to stop and think before blindly agreeing. Since you have a covenant with yourself to maintain your reputation and honor. TLDR. Do absolutely everything you agree to do. And you'll stop saying yes to everything asked of you. I've learned pretty quickly to say no after I let my sister-in-law live with us for a couple of months before she moved out of the country. When she started selling stuff that was in our house. There's a lot more context to this. But TLDR. She was selling random things in the house. The one my wife brings up is the pair of faux leather faux Chuck Taylor All-Stars in our closet. A few years back I was still living at home and my mom wanted me to see these shoes that were on sale on one of the clothing sites she frequented. They were ugly. Dark red fake leather with white soles. I couldn't imagine the person who would buy and wear those shoes. My mom thought I would like them because I wore Chucks whenever I wasn't at work or running. I actually did say no. At least a dozen times. I've never not wanted anything as badly as I didn't want those shoes. That may be a double negative. Whatever. My mom, however, insisted I just buy the damn things because I would like them. Finally she broke out, just give me your debit card and I'll buy them. Which I did to just end the argument. So now I own a pair of shoes I never wanted and wore once while shoveling snow. They sucked. I would always agree to do whatever task at work. I agreed to clean the fryer vents one time. I didn't realize that meant being on a ladder above them while they were on and full of hot oil. I refused to do it and pissed off some people because I had already agreed. I also had an altercation with packing peanuts and I was never the same. You know the big ass collector's map for each state quarter? My grandmother asked if it was okay that she finish off the collection. I wanted to finish it. Because getting all 44 other states already collected took a couple years as it was. But seeing as though I couldn't say no to her, I said yes and handed it off to her. Couple months later I asked if she'd added anything to the collection. To which her reply was, I lost them all at the casino. Old fucking cunt. I had to help my girlfriend's friend move to her new apartment. I expected she had packed everything up and was ready to go. But no. I had to help her pack all the things up and drive all her shit to the new apartment. Did I get paid? No. It was expected of me, obviously. When I turned 16 my mom decided it was time I start earning my keep because my dad was an inveterate drunk who was not home at this time. So she drives me up to the sketchy beach area, think Coney Island, kicks me out of the car. and makes me walk up and down the beach asking sketchy people in booths selling fried dough and other shit for a job. They all sort of stared at me like, why is this middle class looking kid walking around and asking for a job from me? Double quote. She never tried it with my brother because of course Jesus Christ incarnate doesn't need to do any work. She's apparently on her deathbed 3,000 miles away as Jesus Christ incarnate just sent me a text. I didn't answer it and intend never to speak to her or him ever again. When my friend started seeing his boyfriend he wasn't thrilled but he said yeah. Okay. If I say no now it's going to sound weird. Let's try this. After a couple of months his BF told him he was in love. He wasn't. But he said. He's sweet. I can't say no now. He's going to be hurt. Another couple of months pass and my friend has lost all his interest and is ready to break up and move on. So, he says we need to talk. They meet and his BF presents him with a ring. It's not like they can get married where we live, but it made everything serious. So my friend then said, oh, I love you too. That's so sweet. They stayed together for 5 years. Moved in a house. Rarely had sex. After 5 years my friend just said I was never in love with you and his BF lost faith in humanity. My friend decided he missed being with a woman. He's never been with a woman before. So he found a GF. And took all of his friends out of his life in fear that she would find out he's gay. He's not my friend anymore because he's an asshole who ditched me because he said I would be judgmental and his GF thought he was straight. Extra info he ignored. I'm B. Close bracket.